once watched a movie titled Fences. In this movie, it illustrates what exactly it means by dreams which are not reached out. It illustrates how frustrated a parent could be when he has finally retired or became aged, when he has not fulfilled some of his desires and dreams that he had in the past. And it does not only stop by that. This movie illustrates the barriers between responsibility and also the line that draw the difference between what the role of children could be to their parents, as well as what responsibility truly means for the parent. Above all, this movie illustrates a story of an old man who had a dream of playing in one of the baseball teams, but because of some reason, he never achieved that dream. And later on, when the son also had a dream, just equally like he was having in the past, he discouraged the child to never pursue such a dream. This illustrates to us what exactly it means for one to have a dream and not achieve it, the frustration that comes after when you have not achieved that dream. And not only that, it illustrates also the misconception about what exactly it means for parents to be responsible to their children. It illustrates what responsibility equally means on the other side, whereas also giving a clue of what it means also from the children's side. But above all, this is a movie that resonates with every aspect of life. In fact, one line of this movie stated that some people build fences to keep others in, while others build fences to keep others out. You could have been in a fence which has been built by someone else, or perhaps you are in a fence that you have built it yourself. What has been that dream you are hoping for? What has been that thing you have been aspiring with ambitions for? What are some of those things you have not achieved that stresses you to an extent that if someone is dreaming the same way you had dreamed in before, in years ago, you discourage them from reaching such a dream? You are the first person to tell them that dream will never come true, simply because it has happened to you. Perhaps you never achieved it. That is exactly what this movie speaks of. Welcome to our today's episode of the Elevator Podcast. In this pod, we give you book analysis. We also give you the brain scans, and we also help you with tips for personal development. We give you information and insights needed for you to go for whatever you are dreaming of. That's why we call the term the elevator, simply illustrating the gap between where you are to where you want to be. And it requires a flimsy energy to reach that place you want to reach, to become that person you want to be, and also to have the things that you must have as a dreamer. That's why we sloganed it in a way that speaks exactly the motive and also our vision for this podcast. Lifting you from where you are to where you want to be. It's exactly what we do in this podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, for today's edition, we are going to be real short, and we are going to be brief but to the point and precise, in that we are going to understand certain aspect of life, especially understanding circumstance that has always acted like a fence to stop us from reaching whatever we wanted to reach. We had dreams, but for some reason we were kept in a fence that the fences never allowed us to come out in order to reach for those dreams. Perhaps we were outside the fence, and the fence kept us from not reaching inside the fence. in order for us to get whatever life has gotten for us from the other side. That's why the Elevator podcast today, it's going to address some of the fences we have self-created by ourselves, or some people else created those fences for us. And if you could remember the definition of what a fence is, it's that some people build fences to keep you in, while others build fences to keep you out. You're either in or you're either out. You're either being limited by the fences that are visible or the ones that are invisible. And fences of different forms. But in today's pod, we are going to discuss one aspect of the fence that has always stopped many of the people from reaching their potential and meeting their purposes in life. Welcome to our 5th episode of the Elevator Podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be speaking something amazing, especially something that will resonate with the aspect of fences which has always stopped you from reaching the potential you were having inside. That thing that has stopped the seed inside you to grow. It's what we are going to be speaking of in today's pod. But before we start it off, allow us to start with the quote of the day. And we are taking it from an English poet, W.C. Henley, who wrote that you are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. He was trying to mean that it is you that makes everything fulfilled in your life. You are the master of everything that happens to your life, and you are the captain that controls and takes charge of your own soul. That is our quote of the day. And as we start our today's podcast, ladies and gentlemen, allow us get into our review of the previous episode. Episode 4, we were speaking of the different societies that existed. In that podcast we had previously, we were speaking of how society transformed. In fact, we were having a tale of what changed everything from mindset to fulfillment to iniquity and to lots of aspects that happens in life. And in that previous pod, we discovered one thing, and we discovered that every society that existed previously had a different mindset accompanying the society they lived in, meaning that we are a product of our society. In summary, if I could give you what we discussed in the previous episode, it is stated that the mindset of the people that existed in a different society determined every aspect of their life. It determined how they thought, it determined how they reacted, and it determined what they were going to get in life, what they deserved to accomplish in life. It was from those mindset that was a product of the society. And we discovered in that pod also that the societies which existed previously, the truth is that as different eras were coming in, different societies were coming in, but something different was also emerging. And that was the shift in mindset, the shift in attitude, and the shift in perceiving things, behavior, and also ambitions as well as aspiration started having a shift. And if I could give you a summary, you'll get to discover that in our previous pod, we spoke of society that different people had different privileges, how others became even leaders while the others remained average people of the society and mediocres of their communities. We also discovered that those who took the courage and decided to become the people they needed to be, and not to be with less than even an inch of what their potential were, achieved more in life during the previous societies or the previous generations. And it is still the same thing. Right now, we determine whatever needs to happen to life. And we are the captain of our soul. We are the master of every fate that we keep experiencing. Our fault could be the reason for everything. And we need not to blame anyone, because it existed in the previous societies where every decision they made determined what life would be like for them. And it is what we discovered in the previous edition, that a few people gained more than what others could not be able to gain. In other words, it was an indirect way of telling us that even in the previous society, not everyone was becoming better. Not everyone was achieving. All a few categories of people. Those who took the initiative, those who decided to move for it, were the one achieving tranquilities of life. However, we also discovered that some few individuals in the previous societies, the ones that existed before us, those people, according to history, because they always say those who read history can predict the future. According to history, it reveals to us that some people in the past gained even the authority as a leadership position. But we also concluded that we are currently the leaders of our own future. Yes, the past people, some gained control over the resources, some ruled as chiefs, some levied even taxes on others, whereas the others remained as average individuals of the society. But in every society and in every game, there will always be the winners and losers. It is the rule of the game. It's either you're winning it or you are losing it. And in today's podcast, ladies and gentlemen, we want to speak of something amazing and special. And we are picking it right from where we stopped in the previous pod. Today, we want to speak about when your purposes has collusion. In other words, when you are dreaming, and when you are this someone who have surely discovered your purpose, and you are this someone who already know what he or she needs to achieve in life, you already have your dreams, you already have that tranquility, and you have definite reasons for why you want to do certain things. And through all that, there's one thing that cuts across. And every moment you discover your purposes, every moment you want to make a choice, and every moment you have to go for a dream, you always face some obstacles. And ladies and gentlemen, back then, if you could remember, you had no choice in life. Your next action was determined by the people who were surrounding you, the people who are influencing you. Perhaps could be your parents, perhaps could be your people in the community, perhaps could be even your peers. You have been making choices based on their suggestions. You've been making choices based on their opinions, and you've been making choices based on what they chose for you, which resulted to certain pattern of your life. However, later on in life, you discovered what exactly you're made for. Later on in life, you started having a definite purpose. And later on, you started discovering what your dreams are. And you started making choices to accomplish those dreams. But as you have discovered and as you're ready to venture into those purposes of life that you have finally discovered for yourself, and you are really ready to go for it, and you are willing with tenacity to move for those dreams, you face one obstacle, and that is the people's opinion or other opinions. Well, with the dreams you've discovered, with the purposes you already now have a definition of, and with the clear blueprint of the choices you need to make, sooner or later, it starts having a collision with others' opinion. And that is why we have termed today's pod as when your purposes collide with others' opinions. You have a purpose, you have a dream, you have a calling, you have a goal in life, you have that one thing you need to achieve. But with those things within your definition of what success will look like for you, your purposes collide with others' opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, let's explain it this way. Perhaps when you were joining school, your parents told you to study some specific course. Perhaps they wanted to protect their family legacy and heritage. Perhaps the family had a plan that is so different for you in life, and you ended up studying based on what they were wanting and what they need for you to achieve in life in order for them to continue with the heritage and the legacy of the family. However, it also precisely means that, to some extent, that kind of conflict that comes, that arises, opposing your ideas and attitudes, and opposing your dreams or your goals or your interests or even the aspiration, those opinions from maybe your parents, the community, the college you went to, all those opposing whatever you have in ambitions as a dreamer. And you realize that you will make a choice of studying a particular course you need simply because the parents told you to do that and you have no choice. So you end up doing it. Okay, let's put it this way too. Let's say the family had a principle they need to align with, or they have a custom that the children of their families must follow, or perhaps they are trying to train someone in order to carry on with whatever the family has gained. It could be a cool thing. It could be a very fascinating idea for you to follow their suggestion and opinions. It could be good for you then. It could be good for the family as well, because they are seeing that in you. They are seeing that potential, that you are the only one that can carry this family legacy they're speaking of. And they end up aligning you to their opinions. And you end up making a choice based on what they've suggested. However, let's also put it this way. Let's say you've joined college. And as you've joined college, you are there for your first year. And because you performed in some units or some courses, you may be passed in different ways, and the university gives you a different course. Yet, you as someone who has been studying for long now, you had already the idea of who you wanted to be. You had an idea of what life needed to be for you. And equally, you had a blueprint. You had a picture of whatever you need to achieve. But when you get to the university, instead of studying for what you had envisioned before, you find yourself following the choices of what the college has given to you as the course you should be pursuing. We are talking of when your purposes collide with others' opinions. Now, you are now studying a course, not simply because you had the opinion to do that, but because the college has given you a particular course that rhymes with how you performed. So they had to give you a fence that you should live in and never break or come out of that fence. Well, studies show that those who end up studying that way, those who end up even completing colleges and performing better in life, especially during school days, but they maybe performed well, they studied something they were not having a choice of, but they just studied it simply because the school or the college has chosen for them. Studies show that such people ends up working for survival, but not to meet life purposes. And there's a difference between living a life of purpose and living a life of survival. You are just probably surviving and you're not impacting the world. You are not living the other dream of yours that you had, the one that you needed to become. Another similar study which was made also shows that the people who ended up making choices because of other people's opinion, they ended up living life based on how someone was suggesting for them. Studies show that those people end up becoming bored after achieving that because it was not in the line of their passion, it was not aligned to their purposes of life, and it was never aligned to their callings of life. Let's do some reality check right now. If you went to the college, did you perhaps choose the course you needed to take, or the college did it for you based on how you performed in the previous sittings? And right now, perhaps you've even completed your course and you are already working, you are already employed, or you've already started up something in line with what you had studied. Are you in love with what you've studied based on how someone had just suggested for you? Or you are living a life with purpose, even amidst the choices that others made for you? You'll get to find out, and trust me, most people have ever found out this, that life is not what they were expecting. They end up living bored. They end up hating what they have even pursued. They end up not feeling what they are doing. In other words, they are doing whatever they are doing just for the sake of survival, but not for the sake of fulfilling their purposes of life. And I'll just get into some brief analytical aspect of proving whether the choices other people make for us truly impacts us in future. Let's try understanding something today, and let's try revealing some secrets and some facts beyond reasonable proof. Well, we first want to start by understanding what people's expectation of us makes us also rhyme or align ourselves to what they're expecting of us. It's just like when someone is expecting something out of you, you end up acting to the standard of that expectation. You end up doing things for the sake of pleasing the one that was expecting that in you. And you end up living what your purposes are. You end up living what exactly your life callings were. That is exactly what we want to speak of. Way back in the mid-1860s to the early 1930s, there was a man 100 years ago, close to, who studied and analyzed what exactly this means, people's expectations versus the reality of our purposes. And Charles Henton, who taught from the University of Michigan, made a study and a survey to find out the definition of self and how life can be devolved from the self. And not only that, how our different interactions, and in interactions, we are now meaning the expectations of what others expect of us versus your own purposes in life. That is the study he made. He coiled different words and he came up with different aspects of making us understand what exactly this means. And Charles had to conclude in these aspects. One, he says that sometimes, as he described, that the process by which we develop ourselves in line with what people are expecting of us, it's a process that starts with the conversation between you as an individual and that someone that is communicating to you, inwardly or outwardly. And he concluded by saying that whenever we imagine how we appear to those people around us, in other words, if sometimes you think that maybe others are thinking negative about what you want to start, that moment, when you start imagining how your dream is appearing to others, when you start imagining how what you want to go for will resonate with what others will think, at that moment you have a dream and you are sharing it with someone, but it's like a first time for someone to hear it. So you start imagining how that dream, how that vision, how that plan of yours will sound to that ear you're communicating to, or to that one individual you're sharing your vision with. Remember, you are seeing it for yourself, and the other person, it's not seeing it for you. They always say that he who cannot see it for himself or herself can never see it for you. That is a bitter truth. Well, from that step, when you have now imagined how your dream and visions are appearing to someone, later on, you start interpreting their reactions. This is his second conclusion. He stated that from that moment, we start now studying people's reactions towards our dreams, towards our purposes of life, towards what we are doing. We now start imagining their reactions based on their opinions and based on what they're suggesting for us in terms of advising us, in terms of maybe encouraging or inspiring us to go for that. You'll get to find out that most of the people you're sharing your dreams with have no clue, and they are not seeing it the way you're seeing it. And so it makes you to interpret their reaction differently, because they're reacting on something they are not seeing. They're reacting on something they don't have a clue over. And it is from that their reactions stepped up to bring something that now devolves the self-concept. Mr. Charles also concluded by saying that we now develop a self-concept, which is how we interpret others' reaction to us, to frame our feelings, our ideas about what we should do and what exactly we should not do. In other words, when we have told people our dreams, when we have a vision and we are considering people's opinion, when we have discovered our purposes in life, but we feel like our purposes that we have discovered collides with others' opinion, we now start imagining how our dream will appear to them whenever we express that. And not only that, we are going to be interpreting their reactions towards what we have told them as part of our dreams. But not only that, later on, we now develop a conclusion. In other words, we study and interpret their reactions to show whether they are interested in our dreams or they are not interested in our dreams. That is exactly the key differentiator. In fact, this is the whole conclusion of today's episode. After we discovering their reaction, we cannot perceive or we cannot draw a concept whether they are in harmony with what we are dreaming and seeing or envisioning, or they are totally discouraged, or they're not buying the idea, or they're never agreeing with it. This is exactly the point we are speaking of. And from studying their reactions and we perceiving them differently, we get to conclude that either they're not buying the idea or they're perhaps agreeing or seconding that suggestion or maybe that vision we have inwardly. And now, from how we have studied their reaction to us, the self devolves and we start now having our own feelings. In other words, from that conclusion, we frame our feelings and ideas about what we should do and what we should not now do. After you expressing your ideas, after you expressing your dreams, and after them showing that they're totally not in harmony with that dream of yours, you now start putting a frame of how you are feeling towards them and how they're feeling also towards you. And later, you now draw an idea of either they're in support or they're not in support of what you are out there to do. And note that the development does not depend on accurate evaluation. This is according to Charles. It says that since those three procedures have been done already, and you have already now determined whether they are interested in you going for that or not, whether they are determining for you to become your own self or not, whether they are encouraging your purposes or callings in life, or they are not encouraging that, still, it is from that same aspect that it does not draw an accurate conclusion. In other words, it does not depend on an accurate conclusion. What they're thinking, what they're concluding about your opinions or ideas or suggestions in life may not be the whole conclusion, may not be the best way they've evaluated you. Let's say you are dreaming big and someone tells you, oh, you're never going to make that dream achievable, just like you've had it several times. And later on, they evaluate you after some years while you're doing that, and they get to discover that, wow, this guy, this lady is becoming the person he first dreamed 5 years ago. Meaning that what they concluded before was not accurate, but it was yours which was accurate. In other words, it's vice versa too. What you are concluding from them as their suggestion may not be accurate also to your own dreams. Let's put it clear this way. Let's say you told them your dreams and your visions. You told them exactly what exactly life has got for you and the purposes. And they end up not buying the idea, meaning that they've not seconded it. They're not in support with it. They're not even willing to give a favorable condition for that to come to reality. But still, years later, because they've evaluated you in the other way around, and you've evaluated them to prove them that they are wrong, so you end up winning their opinion. You end up influencing them through the milestones you have achieved. Or equally, if you don't succeed in it, they will still have a chance of opposing you later on by saying, I told you it wasn't going to work out. So the evaluation process, it's a 50-50 thing. The evaluation process, it's not a conclusion. It's not on accuracy. He can be true, she can be true, that your dream cannot be true, whereas you can still prove them wrong. It is based on now what conditions will be provided in order for you to go for and achieve that dream. And as those evaluation keeps on going. And as we keep misjudging ourselves, what are they thinking of me? In other words, what am I thinking of them? And when such questions are now having conflicts, that's why we are saying they're now colliding. It's now colliding with the other people's opinion as your own visions of life. And through those misjudgments, through those misinterpretation, we now get to draw ourselves to a conclusion of what are they now thinking of me right now? Since I've not achieved my dream that I had before, what are they now thinking of me? Or in other words, if you have finally achieved your dream, and them who first discouraged you before will also be asking, what is he or what is she thinking of me? It's a win-win situation as you could draw the board together. And remember that our opinions and other people's opinions will always last forever. In other words, it starts from childhood, where your parents used to determine what you're going to wear, where you need to go, the foods you need to eat. They're the one who used to determine and make a choice for you. But as life goes on through the different processes of life, through the different causes of life, as you grow, you keep now modifying your choices. As you grow, you keep changing your perception over the others. As you grow, you keep on adjusting your opinion versus other people's opinion. You keep adjusting your choices versus other people's suggestions of choices you must make. And ladies and gentlemen, let's first take a moment to reflect too by using some mirrors of life. In fact, we have about 3 mirrors of life. Number 1 mirror is what you know about yourself. That is the first mirror. What do you know about yourself that the others do not know? What is that inside thing burning in you? What is that fire that is filled with ego in you? What is that one thing you need to chase in life? What is that one thing that will define success and purpose to you? What are they? That is the number 1 mirror for you to evaluate yourself versus what others could be having in opinion about you. And when you use that mirror to discover who you are exactly, then chances are that people's opinion will not end up defining what your destiny should be. And the number 2 mirror of life is that what others know about you. What do they know about you? Yes, it is true they have known a lot about you since childhood. It is true they know about you historically. It is true they know about you genetically. It is true they know about you in a society way. It is true they know about you in religious perspective. It is true they know about you in different angles of life, different aspects. They know your works, they know your styles, they know your traits, they know your heritage. They know facts about you that you may not even be knowing for yourself. In fact, as someone one time stated that there are some people who knows about others than they know about themselves. And that is exactly what is applicable to all of us. There is that someone who knows more about you than what you know about yourself. It is absolutely very true, and don't be scared about this. But we can just use that as a mirror. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. The number 2 mirror is that what others know about you. And though they know that about you, it cannot become a determining factor for who you are. And ladies and gentlemen, the 3rd mirror you must use in order to know who yourself is the truth about you. Now in life, you may build your life around what you know about yourself, or you can end up building life around what others know about you. In other words, you can end up making choices based on what your suggestions are in life, or you can make choices based on what other people's opinion could be for you. It is all up to you. But the conclusion should be the truth. What is the truth about yourself? What is the truth in you? In fact, if there's any important mirror of life, that mirror will always be the truth about who you are. Yes, others know about you, but it's only you who knows about your truth. It's only you who knows about what is inside your heart, what is in between your guts, what your egos and the burning desires are. You're the one who knows what you think day and night. You're the one who have a blueprint of how you need life to act as in future. That is the truth about you. But however, if we might speak of the different advantages as well, you see, as we stated, that one mirror or one aspect of life is also by understanding what others think of us. The advantage is that it gives us the ability to know some things in life. It allows us to self-correct, and it gives us what is expected of us, as well as it lays a foundation for our behaviors. Those are some of the few advantages when you are using others to be your mirrors in life, but does not tell everything. It tells something, but it cannot tell everything about yourself. Well, as we conclude today's podcast, let's have a conclusion by having a keen reflection on the following. I need you to take humble time to close your eyes if possible and to meditate upon the statements I'm going to mention, for it will give you the courage and the tenacity of benefiting from this episode of the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, those who have ever succeeded in life, whether in spiritual achievement, whether in materialization, whether in politics, or in different callings of life, those people never allowed people's opinion to control them. Now, show me he or she who uses people's opinion and still become who they wanted to be. Chances are that you will never find one. But I will show you someone who has always battled with the choices and opinions of others and still carried on becoming who they want to be. Go in the world of politics, get into the world of sports, get into the world of business, get into different worlds of life. You'll get to find out that most achievers in life, those who have ever amounted achievements in life, were people who never allowed people's opinion to control them. Yes, though they allowed it to some extent, but they never relied on them forever. And that is what I'm telling you. In other words, they call them rebels. The definition of a rebel is to rebel, is to resist, is to refuse what has been settled. It's to break the rule, it's to break the law. It's to not be within the line. It is not to act the way you are expected to act. That is the definition of a rebel. And for achievers in life, for those who have ever achieved in all aspects of life, those people became rebels. And you know what? The rebel we are meaning is that they never allowed people's opinion to define them. They went for what was meant for them, and they never followed what people's suggestion could be for them. And I remember Les Brown one time saying that someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. What a powerful statement. Yes, they have their own opinion of how you should live your life, how you should conduct yourself, how you should behave. Though to some extent it could be of advantage. However, when it comes to achievement, when it comes to accumulation, when it comes to becoming who you want to be, someone's opinion does not have to be and define your reality, because the world will be filled with negativity only about your dreams. That's the bitter fact. Go anywhere in the world, you'll get to discover this fact. And I need you to note that those who can't say it for themselves cannot say it for you. That is the truth that we want to reveal to you. Those who can't say it for themselves will never say it for you. And sometimes you rely getting approval, seeking permission from them, or taking yourself to be this someone who must first get approval from others, and you don't want to rebel about them. Not that some people can't see it for themselves. They will tell you no. They will tell you the reason why it won't work out, simply because they cannot see it for themselves. But you, as an individual, you have the potential, you have the capability, you have all the tenacity needed for you to achieve that. And yet the surprising aspect is that you will be limited around the fence of what others' opinion could be about you. And you don't end up going for whatever life has in store for you. And as we conclude, I need you also to know that sometimes you don't need the whole world to believe in you in order for you to achieve certain things in life. Because the achievers you know in your community, in your country or state, in your location, at the workspace, those achievers had few people believing in them. But they had to believe in themselves. Just like someone one time stated that you have to believe in yourself even when no one believes in you. Okay? So for the achievers, you can only achieve anything you need in life if only you believe in yourself and not waiting for others to believe in you. Though to some extent it helps when others are believing in you. But to most cases, some people will never believe in you. And when you have strived and finally become the person you wanted to be, when you finally strive and achieve the things you wanted to achieve, and when you finally gotten that thing you are wanting to get, they end up living in, oh, he has achieved this. I mean, they could not believe in you earlier. They could not even see that you are going to achieve that. However, later on, as you've strived and you have finally achieved, they end up becoming surprised. Those who never believed in you, or those who had a negative opinion about whatever life callings would have been for you. That's why they are always going to be in an awe and in a shock, not believing. Well, others will tell you, oh, we prayed for you. No. It is not that way. It's only that you overcame what their suggestions and opinions were over you, and you never allowed it to define your destiny. Ladies and gentlemen, there's one fantasizing quote from Dr. Dennis Amens. It speaks of the 18-40-60 rule. I had Dr. Dennis Amens say something very fascinating when it comes to we making choices in life. And in one of his rules, he stated that at the time you are 18 and below, you are worrying about what others were thinking of you. You are living within what others were having in opinions and suggestions for you. But later on, as you grow in life, and probably you're in your 40s, you don't give a damn to what someone's opinion could be for you. You end up going for whatever life has called you for. In other words, you don't need an approval from your parents' parents. You don't need an approval from your college teachers, from your professors. You don't need an approval from whatever society you're living in. That rule, it's a principle in life. But later on, when you reach 60, according to his rule, it stated that you get to realize that people's opinion was not there to help you. In other words, you get to regret why you followed other people's opinion instead of following your heart desires. Instead of following your heart, you get to wonder why exactly you remain an average and being controlled. Just like I earlier stated that some people in life have built fences to keep us in or to keep us out. And by the time you reach 60, you get to realize that indeed other people's opinion were just like a fence that kept me in and never reaching my potential. Or it was like a fence that kept me out from not reaching my life's calling. It is a moment that you take to now regret why you never used the most important and precious moments of life to make your own choice, but rather you ended up living life based on how others expected of you, which later they will never now mind. In fact, Dr. Dennis Amens stated that at the time you're 60, you realize that those who pretended to care for you surely never cared for you. Those who advised you in terms of opinions and what you need to follow, or the designs of life that they had architectured for you, you'll get to realize that those people were not minding for you. They were minding about themselves. That is when you regret. Just like I earlier illustrated that a movie called Fences, directed by Denzel Washington, it is state of the aspect of this regret. Such a regret that comes when now you're aged, when you have not achieved your dreams, when you have not become the person you wanted to be, and when now you have reached a point where you're regretting simply because you never took the initiative to become the person you wanted to be. And that power of regret makes you even transfer it to the others, and you make also others fall victim of the dreams you've never reached in life. You end up regretting. You even end up discouraging others, especially your children, to not reach for certain dreams because you've maybe tried in the earlier time and it failed. And now you say, to hell with it. It cannot now happen in the history of our family lineage. And later on, you regret when you are now in your advanced ages. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been our today's episode of the Elevator Podcast. Catch a recap of this via our official YouTube channel, The Elevator Podcast 256. It's where you can get to replay and re-listen, or perhaps download and also listen to it more in the later while, including our previous edition. Let's get back as we conclude our today's episode with our last slot of the pod, the book review segment. In our book review segment for today's edition, as we conclude with our today's pod, it is an amazing fact that everything in life and everything happening to you are directly the result of the thoughts you had. It is the thought that one has that ends up making him or her become the person he is. It is from the power of your thought that gets to control how much comes into your account. It is from the thoughts you have that gets to determine how your family should be. The thoughts of life, which is directly a result and a conclusion of the choices you've been making, which all started by the thoughts you have had in the before moments. And ladies and gentlemen, with me here, I'm holding a book we have been reviewing for the previous edition. And this book is titled Think and Grow Rich. It didn't say work and grow rich, not the point. It stated that think and grow rich, meaning that everything in the world has been controlled by the power of thinking. As Winston Churchill stated that the world is not controlled by money or weapon. The world is controlled by imagination. When you imagine it, you can become it. And it is from this book that you can get insights needed for you to achieve that. And if we flip through the pages of this book, we are still reviewing the chapter 1 of this book. And somewhere within chapter 1, it speaks of our past experience. You see, when a cat sits on a hot stove, the cat can never sit on a cold stove either in the later time. It's equally the same thing when it comes to our past in life. Our past has always controlled us. It has always avoided us to reach for other things. In other words, our past in life has always been a roadblock and a stumbling block. However, for some people, like the individuals who have been illustrated in this book of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he stated that every moment he felt like giving up. This chapter speaks of the story of one of the greatest life insurers, sailmaker. He is internationally recognized for selling insurance, especially the life insurance, to millions of his state, winning awards and being recognized in all aspects of life. And he was giving his story from this book of Think and Grow Rich, and he narrated a story of his past. In fact, his past stated that there was a moment in life he was almost reaching gold, but he ended up giving up, and he couldn't now reach the other gold he was mining underground. And every time in life, when he thinks of quitting, when he thinks of stopping, he only gets back to the memory of one time not reaching the goal. So for him, his past was like an energizer. For him, his past was like a booster for him to get to more tranquilities of life. And in this book, you could grab a copy and also take a reading of it. But precisely, I want to let you know that sometimes when we start becoming successful in life, success comes so quickly to such an extent that it will be in abundance, and you'll get to question yourself, where was I before this success started coming in? And that time will come that you'll even achieve more. And you'll get to ask yourself, where have I been all those past years? But above all, I need to read for you some lines of this book. Now, this book states of having a state of mind, a definite purpose, and some work out in order for you to achieve whatever life has got for you. But above all, it also advises us that besides our past, we must in the present also know that success comes to those who become success conscious. A very good point to note. And also, one aspect of this book from the first chapter towards the last pages of the first chapter also states that one must also discover some of the habits he has to deal out with. What are some of those things that are defined as weakness in you altogether, that due to that habit, it measures everything for you? And everyone, by their own impressions and belief, can get discouraged by those same habits. Now, to you who could be a dreamer, get to know that some habits needs to be changed in order for you to start thinking and growing rich. That has been it for our today's book review. And I must say it has been a pleasing pleasure having you from the time we started until this tail end moment. From me to you, have yourself a splendid moment. But remember, that everything learned in this podcast might be useless to you if you don't put it in practice, and get to know that the only way we can transform information like this into reality is when we practically get involved in doing what is required of us in order for us to achieve. Get to follow me through my different social handles: LinkedIn at Joshua Oyepa, Instagram at Joshua Oyepa, X at Joshua Oyepa, Facebook at Joshua Oyepa, and get to listen to our previous podcast via the Elevator Podcast on YouTube by typing the Elevator Podcast 256. Subscribe to the channel and get notification every time we are getting into live or every time we upload any show that we have been having. From me to you, enjoy the best of your life purposes.